Welcome to the award-winning Performance Matters podcast from GP Strategies, the learning velocity company. In a world moving at the pace of AI, each episode brings you practical ideas and real experiences from industry experts to help your people learn with the speed, relevance, and quality that drive real performance. Welcome back to Performance Matters. I'm your host, Michael Thiel. Today, we're talking about a problem a lot of organizations feel. Leaders can sit through great training and still freeze when the real moment shows up. My guests today believe that leadership isn't learned by collecting frameworks. It's built through practice, at speed, and with the right partners. Björn Billhardt is the CEO of Abilitie, known for simulation-based leadership development programs and AI scenarios that give leaders a safe space to make decisions, see consequences, and get better through reps. And Lisa Fagan is VP of Sales for Leadership Development and Inclusion at GP Strategies. She works with people, learning, and business leaders every day on this exact challenge. Björn and Lisa, welcome to Performance Matters.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you, Michael.
Absolutely. Well, listen, I'm so excited here, so let's jump in. I will admit something here, Björn, okay? I've been doing my research on you and Abilitie in preparation for today, and if I might just paraphrase a bit here, I've seen in some articles that you've indicated that in your world, frameworks don't change behavior, practice does. And by frameworks, we're talking about things like the GROW model, right? Situational leadership, servant leadership. I mean, we're not going to throw out the baby with the bathwater here. They're important, but changing behavior takes practice. So with that in mind, I'm going to kick this off with the question is, when leaders actually get this repeated consequence-based repetition, what have you observed actually changes the fastest?
Yeah. I mean, so first of all, I should say there is nothing wrong with frameworks. Frameworks are what is it? Necessary but not sufficient. Is that the
Yes.
term? So
Fair enough.
so absolutely, you can build leadership development programs around frameworks, and we have built many of our programs around frameworks, but they're just not sufficient. You got to have more than that, because as you well know, you put a framework on a wall in a PowerPoint slide, and the higher up the you go in leadership development, the less someone will pay attention to it, right? And we compare it to riding a bicycle. You can give all of the theory of gravity to someone. They're not going to learn how to ride a bike just with that theory. It's necessary to do it, but it's not sufficient. And that's where practice comes in.
I love it. You use the bike. I'm a golf nut. I always say, hey, you can show me the 6 steps to a great swing, but put me in front of a 180-yard carry over water, and I better know how to use it, right? I better know how to do it, right?
Yep,
So
yep.
now, Lisa, I know that you are on the account side of things here. So does that match what you're hearing from clients? I mean, what's the frustration they're typically bringing to GP when it comes to leadership development?
Yeah, I mean, it's really as you guys have said. I mean, the framework. It's not about getting rid of a framework. It's about dialing up what you do with the framework. It's about doubling down on the practice end of it. So the clients that we deal with want a solid foundation of knowledge, a skill set. They want the framework, but they want the skill set to be embedded, and they want it embedded more readily. So, how we go about doing the practice, the frequency of the practice, and the ability for someone to perform in the moment, in the flow of work, is what our clients are looking for.
Yeah. I'll give you one more example. I'm a private pilot, and in pilot training, there's really 3 things you do. There's ground school, and that's the theory. You got to know how an airplane flies. Then there's simulator training, and that is a lot of repetition and just understanding how to do things. And then, and this is also true for real leadership, you actually have to go up in the air and fly. And so that's why you can't put a recent college grad in as a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, because you got to actually have real world experience as well. So it's the combination of those 3, and us as instructional designers in the learning and development world, our job is to figure out how to mix and match those 3 modalities in just the right way.
Right, right. And you said it well because you can't go up in the air without some kind of manual or instruction at all in terms of flying. That would literally mean flying by the seat of your pants, wouldn't it? And so you got to have a basis,
I
a
don't want
found,
a ticket on that plane.
yeah, and then have that practice in order
Yeah.
to do the job well. Yes.
Yeah. And some leaders do, right? Like some leaders do fly by the seat of their pants, right? And some are very successful at it even. So it's not it but I think for us as learning and development professionals, our job is to figure out how do we create the perfect flight school to have as few people flying by the seat of their pants as possible.
Yeah, and I will say this, if you happen to be listening to the podcast, I would encourage you to check out our vodcast because if we solo on Bjorn's camera, you will see his flight simulator. It's not even just a story. There is a flight simulator on his right-hand side there. And he did promise me that he would invite me down to Austin, Texas to give it a try. So just waiting for the invite here, Bjorn. But okay, so Bjorn, here's something I've been curious to ask you. Okay, so spill a little tea here for me. All right. So what's one behavior leaders think they're good at until they have to do it in the moment?
There are many of them,
I
and
I need one.
um, one that comes to mind is giving feedback, even at the most senior level. Even after running a business now for 25 years as an entrepreneur, having given hundreds of performance reviews, both formal and informal, um, giving the right feedback um, at the right moment in the right way is still a challenge. So I think feedback. Everyone says feedback is a gift, and it is one gift as a leader that you can give to people around you, not just people that work for you, but people that work with you, people that you work for. Um, in it is one of the hardest things to do well and do consistently well when the world is so chaotic around you. The people around you are changing. There are different people with different assumptions coming into your life. So giving feedback, I think, both professionally and personally, is one of the hardest things. People think they do a lot better than they actually are.
I would agree, Lisa. What's your take on that one too? Just curious. I know you've seen this over the decades.
For sure. Feedback is definitely one that rises to the top as an area that leaders are challenged by, but communication is the other, believe it or not. I mean, for someone who has grown up in the organization or come to the level that they're at, they often will speak around topics, not on the topic. The concern typically is that they don't want to create any kind of polarizing comments or statements. So they tend to speak in generalities, and that doesn't necessarily convey the message. So I'd say communication is another area that leaders are challenged by, especially if they're more concerned about pleasing people than they are about leading.
Yeah, those are really great points, and I wanna shift the conversation here to measurement and really specifically how we know someone is improving because I know that's a big element in terms of justifying an investment in leadership here. So let's face it, a lot of leadership programs still get judged on. I guess we call it the level one type stuff, the did you like it, the smile sheets, that kind of thing. But Bjorn, if we're serious about truly measuring performance, what should we be measuring instead?
It's the perpetual question, right, for L&D leaders that no one ever answers, and everyone is trying to, kind of come up with new methodologies, right? Whole books have been written about it, and yet there's still no consensus. And I think one of the reasons why there is no consensus on how to measure ROI in learning and development in similar ways that everyone knows how to measure widgets when they're in a factory is that humans are not widgets, and you cannot measure throughput output of what is a better leader in any meaningful way that someone that doesn't believe is can't shoot a hole in it with that is bigger than any argument you make. So I think one of the things we as learning and development leaders have to be clear upfront is that leadership is one of those things that mean different things to different people. Different leadership skills are valued differently in companies, and so what is great leadership in one company is horrific leadership in another. So how do you even then measure like what is good leadership, right? Empathy is great leadership skill that people oftentimes cite, right? So what is more empathetic is being really, really nice to someone or giving them the truth in a very harsh way so that they can improve. One company says has a very different answer to that question than another. So given that challenge, right, given how hard it is to measure what good leadership is, I do think there's actually there is preponderance of evidence that companies that invest in their people in terms of giving them stretch assignments, opportunities, but also providing structured leadership programs tend to have a more loyal a more loyal employee base, tend to ultimately perform better in the market, right? And so you have lots and lots of evidence. Book Good to Great is all about kind of what
Hmm.
are those measurements, right? So there is a preponderance of evidence that that type of investment matters, and giving people the opportunity, and we're in the practice environment, we don't believe in just one framework. Any frame, most frameworks are good for a particular purpose, but ultimately giving people both the ground school, the frameworks, and giving them the practice environment in the right way, and then giving them stretch assignments in the real world, the right mix of that will lead to outcomes. That is a non-answer to your question, mainly because um, any type of um, effort to create a numeric number on what a good leader is going to be very hard. Now, here's the corollary to that, and I'm really actually quite excited about it, because pre-AI, it was almost impossible to measure anything beyond the smile sheets and beyond maybe your manager kind of saying, well, I think this person has improved a bit. So pre-AI, there really wasn't anything we can go on. But I do think AI gives us an opportunity. We're not there yet, and we're still experimenting with kind of how to do this right. But there are ways in which you can now start to really measure. We have a lot of data. We have lots of emails. We have lots of we have now recordings of phone calls. There's lots of data that at some point is going to be very, very helpful in providing personalized uh, development plans. And that is going to ultimately also give us a sense for what type of leader there is. I don't think there'll ever be a score that says this person was a 60% leader and now they're an 80%. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, but what I'm hearing from you though is that with the advent of AI building that into your platform, you can start to get a handle on giving people some quantifiable feedback on their empathy without having another human being have to be there and give them that feedback. And I think that's an exciting trend that you're mentioning. And Lisa, I'm going to put this over to you. You're in the room with HR, L&D, business leaders. You're trying to make a case for the investment on a leadership program. I mean, tell us here, what's that measurement conversation look like from your end?
Mm, The best conversations we have around measurement are when they're centered around outcomes. So Bjorn's right about that. Um, the way we come at measuring those outcomes for me and for our organization is largely around how those outcomes then drive impact to the business. So it's not just about behavior
Hmm.
change, and behavior change in and of itself is a good thing if the change is to the positive and if it has a positive impact on the business. So it's looking at both of those things. It's identifying what is the desired outcome of the business, and then how will we arrive at that outcome through behavior change? So we've got to track both of those elements. If we're not doing that, then we're not giving them the data that they're really looking for. So when we're down with clients, sitting down with clients, and we're having that conversation, and they're willing to have the outcome and impact discussion with us, then the natural extension of that is how are we going to get about measuring the outcome and the impact? So if we can have that dialogue, those are the best conversations, and those are the most enlightened clients.
I'll give you one quick example of something that we've done that actually kind of gets to more of that discussion on outcomes. So we in our simulated environments, we have AI characters that you interact with, and
Right.
we have had a client that has basically sent their entire sales force through these interactions with the AI. And now they have very granular data of like which regions in the world, this was worldwide, flew everyone into a conference worldwide, which regions had which challenges when they were interacting in a sales capacity. And because it was an AI conversation, it was recorded on our platform, we then could give the client a region by region analysis of here are the types of things that you may be experiencing, right, in the EMEA region, and here are the types of interventions that we think would be better than others. So very granular data that previously would have been almost impossible to collect and have a human analyze.
Yeah, I love this idea of essentially bringing visible some things that were, super critical, but fairly ethereal there. And you alluded to something. I'd like your take on this too, Bjorn. Like, if you had to pick, for example, three indicators that someone's leadership is leveling up several notches, from your opinion, what would that be?
So I'll give you my personal ones that I observe in leaders that I've seen rise both in the organization that I lead, but also in clients. So um, humility is probably one thing that that the more mature a person gets in the leader, the more they realize that they don't know, the more they realize they don't control. And so humility is something that I have observed in people that are rising in their ranks, to increase. Curiosity. I think you come out of school, you're like, okay, I'm ready for the world. You know, I know everything, nothing can stop me. Uh, the leaders that have leveled themselves up over time have had a consistent and increasing, not decreasing level of curiosity about the world and what is going on around them. Um, and then I think for the most senior leaders, and we play leadership development simulations at all levels, it's really interesting and fascinating to see um, the higher up we go in an organization, when they play in our simulations, the entry level kind of first time leaders, no matter how bright, oftentimes selected hypo programs, it's always a little chaotic, and there's always a action bias to get things done and to move things along that leads to conflict and strife. When we play with the same simulation setup with senior level executives, with SVPs at companies, there is a really marked calmness at the beginning
Hmm.
of the simulation that shows that everyone is trying to first make sense of the world before they're starting to issue an opinion. So I'm going to say uh, uh, humility, curiosity, and an ability to observe before you speak. Those are my three.
Ooh, I love that. Lisa, how about you listening to that? What are your thoughts on those three? Are those solid pillars?
They're solid, and it's hard to top those. The only thing that I would add, we talk a lot about how leaders move up and advance in an organization based on their competence, their proficiency to do the work, their knowledge of the business, uh, and yet they struggle with the ability to connect. And so that's all in the human realm. That's all in how they interact with the people around them, with clients, with employees, with people in the organization that they may not see on a regular basis. So when you were talking about curiosity about how the leaders that level up have a curiosity about the world around them, what I'd add to that is they have a curiosity about the employees in the organization and the work that they do and the challenges that they have and that they face on a regular basis. And you inspire people to follow you when you can relate to what it is that they're challenged by on a day-to-day basis. If they feel like you don't have a clue because you're too high up in the organization and then that ivory tower, then they're less inspired and less willing to follow you, especially through difficult times. So I'd add that to the curiosity dialogue. The
I love
humility
it.
is just so powerful. I couldn't
Hmm.
agree with you more. Humility leads to that willingness to observe before you act, that willingness to ask questions before you take action, and that willingness to consider what it's like to walk a mile in the employee's shoes before you start making decisions. And so I think that is the place to start. If you can absolutely approach your leadership from a well, they talk about the humble leader. I mean, there's books written about it, and if you can start there, then the rest of it becomes easier, doesn't it?
Absolutely, and I love this. You two are setting up mile markers here of what's visible. I'm also hearing that with AI, we're changing what's possible. But I also want to just mention and have you two weigh in on the upsides and downsides of AI. I'm sure I'm not going to shock either of you if I say there's a little bit of anxiety right now in the workplace about AI displacing roles. But let's fix that lens on leadership development because I'm hearing from both of you something a little different of AI accelerating how fast leaders can develop. So just curious if we think about just framing this conversation on, let's say, leadership in the AI era, what are your perspectives of AI? Is it a threat? Is it a capability? Is it somewhere in between? Bjorn, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, biggest topic around, and no one has answers. So talking about humility, I should first say that whatever I'm saying next, I have no idea. Just like
We're all
anyone
newbies
else,
in AI, but
we're
but
all
as
learning.
the CEO of a
Yeah,
business, let's talk about it.
we're all learning together. Yeah, I think, I mean, there's obviously this enormous promise, and I just mentioned, well, what if AI can look into your emails and tell you, kind of what are the areas that you can improve on? That's really scary for most people in the world, right? Because also, while it can tell you how to improve and become better at your job, it can tell the same thing to your boss and maybe unfairly give you a grade that you don't deserve, right? So a thousand things that could go wrong. I mean, both L&D related and large, right? We could all the world could go under in 2 years if AI takes over certain elements of our political realm. So it's hard to say where things are going to go, but it's absolutely clear that we can't ignore what AI is going to do. And in the realm of leadership development, I think the paradox here is that the world of work is going to move faster and faster, which paradoxically I think will mean that the world of leadership development may need to actually, like, leaders need to actually spend more of that calm time thinking, um, and slowing down, and the tasks that a leader is going to be asked to do, because the world of work is so fast and can be coming at you really, really quick. It's actually going to become a lot harder to be a good leader, and that means paradoxically that leadership development actually may slow down and you have to spend more time really honing those skills to make the right judgment calls, make the right decisions as a leader. And so we're using a lot of AI inside of our leadership programs. It's incredibly powerful. AI role plays, AI coaches. There's a lot there to speed up the leadership development. But I think the actual skills that you will need as a leader will all revolve around what Lisa just said earlier, which is the human skills, um, judgment and critical thinking and dealing with others. And I am not sure that we ultimately don't need to have a slowdown to build those skills, because they're going to be a lot more complex.
Yeah. I like that saying I've heard before of go slow to go fast, right? And when you mention one of those pillars of calmness, that certainly is there, and I can see that being a hallmark. And Lisa, so let's put us in the mind of your clients here, okay? So when you're encountering a prospective client and they say to you, "Hey, we need to develop leaders for the AI era," I'm sure I'm not the first person to ever say that to you. I mean, what are they looking for when you dive into that? Is it this technical fluency, something else? I mean, what are your thoughts?
Well, they are across the spectrum, Michael. There's no doubt about it. There's some clients that are, let's wait and see, or this too shall pass. It's a flash in the pan. There are some people that are in that space. And then there are those that are very progressive in their thinking, that are embracing AI, bringing AI into the organization to do things that in the past others would do, like coaching through AI avatars, as an example, which is can be really powerful. The ones that are doing it the best at this moment in time are the ones that don't see it as a threat, that view it as a capability, that recognize that AI is the most enabling and most powerful when it's coupled with the wisdom of a human. So it's
Hmm.
not losing the ability of the humans to apply that discernment, that knowledge that they bring through life experience, through work experience, because AI will inform, will accelerate, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's always right. So it cannot necessarily always be 100% spot on, and so the leader has to be able to separate the wheat from the chaff and to guide their people on how best to use the capability and what it yields when you leverage AI. But to take the posture that it's going to go away, or that it is a threat to roles and jobs will be eliminated, it's a negative spiral. So leaders that can embrace it and look at ways to help guide their employees on how to leverage it for the future are the ones that are going to be the most successful in our view.
I Those are such critical points. Uh, and I think it's really, really important to also realize what AI, at least in its current state, is not able to do. Leadership development, in my mind, and learning and writ large, in my mind, is a contact sport, and it
Hmm.
requires a human. It requires humans. When I remember when I got my start in the learning and development industry, e-learning was the hot thing, right? And everyone
Right.
believed that e-learning would get rid of teachers. I mean, I remember the headlines, right? Like everything will be replaced by e-learning. Well, it didn't happen in the last 20 years, right? Like MOOCs didn't take off, right? Like you can watch every single lecture from Stanford and MIT online for free. How many people do that, right? It's yeah. So when you think about AI, and even an AI tutor, and it's really interesting because Sal Khan was one of the first ones to launch as an AI tutor in his programs, and actually has just recently come out and said, hey, it's not working the way we thought it would. Um, and it's an interesting kind of thing to think about. It's like, is an AI tutor, you know, another tool like e-learning was 20 years ago? And we all are using e-learning. There's no question that online courses are very effective in certain areas, but they haven't replaced the teacher, the classroom environment, the social interaction. Um, and I'm not a betting man, and I just said that I want to be humble here and not make predictions, but I do think we're gonna find some incredibly powerful ways in which AI will help the world and help the world of learning. But it may not be that, in the way that most of us are now going, oh wow, AI will just replace all tutoring. I'm not
I
sure.
love that.
Yeah, so I'm
I
not
think
sure
Yeah,
that's
that's a
gonna.
I think that's a
yeah.
hopeful message, right?
It is, but those are people that are thinking about it in terms of efficiencies and trying to streamline things. That's not the thrust of it. It's a tool. It's an aid. In the example I'll give you, you just made me think of this, Bjorn. I had a situation with someone that reported to me that we really challenged by um, just some issues around, whether or not they were eligible for certain aspects of remuneration relative to their performance. And uh, I was struggling with what were the rules of play. It was a unique circumstance. I punched into AI, a question around what do other leaders in this situation, what do they do? And what came back wasn't just trends. and data and information, but my own corporate policy that I didn't even know was there, that I didn't have time to go find. So, but what I was left with as a leader was, now that I have the data, the information, how do I message that to the employee? How do I have the coaching conversation? That is the human aspect of it. So, what it allowed me to do was not spend my entire time looking for trends and data and law and all of the things that were important in this particular situation, but it allowed me to focus on how I was going to convey the message to get to the outcome we were all looking for with that particular employee.
Yeah. And the
Yeah,
last
it
thing
sounds
that
like it made you distinctly more human, is what it did. It allowed you, it freed you up to keep your energies on really connecting and serving your staff. Yeah, Bjorn, I'm sorry I interrupted you there.
Yeah, no, I was going to say the last thing that that employee would want is for the AI to
Right.
deliver that message. Like you have to still deliver that message, right? And
Exactly.
You
Exactly.
didn't just copy that and forward it on,
Well,
Lisa? I
that's
mean,
the
that would have been
danger, right? I
efficient.
mean, that is absolutely the temptation and the danger, and so we come full circle when we talk about, what was leveling up looking like.
Right, right.
If leaders don't choose to embrace how to communicate that, then the temptation is to just hand over what AI would have spit out in that instance, and that's not necessarily gonna get the impact and the outcome, or certainly not inspire people to follow you.
Yeah, for sure. I want to backtrack on something here, Bjorn. You had mentioned that about not replacing, but supplementing, and I think that's a great topic because I think environment really matters for learning. I mean, it's been proven social learning can double in some cases someone's retention, and one of the things I've actually appreciated about your platform at Ability is that the experiences are safe, but they still feel pretty real here. So, thinking as a designer of these experiences, why is that balance so important? And where do companies get it wrong?
this is such a it's a great question that I've 25 years of simulation design. I want to be humble, but I do feel I have a little bit of an answer to that
You
question.
do. We're
Um,
giving you license. We're asking for your insight here. Okay.
yeah, so one of the really fascinating things when we first started out, the very first case studies that we built were actually two that I did while I was in my second year of business school. And one was one where you had a simulated environment that you did by yourself, and the other one was where two people had to communicate and collaborate to come up with a goal, and then they competed against other teams. It was night and day, and after that experiment in business school 25 years ago, I knew where I wanted to make a mark. It was in using simulations in a social environment. As often it's actually really hard because we haven't found a word for it yet. When I say we do simulation-based learning, a lot of people think, oh, this is like, you would put a VR goggle on and then you're on your own. That's the last thing I would want people to think about when they think about Ability. Every one of our simulations is social in their nature, and the learning comes in when you do something unexpected and your partner calls you out on it and you realize, hey, wait a second, I would have done it differently, and you have a dialogue and discussion. So you learn from the simulation. Yes, there's all sorts of things you learn when you pull the levers in the simulation, but you really are learning in the social environment from each other. So when people are like, well, it's a simulated environment, it's not, we oftentimes use fictitious industries because we don't want to get people to get hung up on their specific industry. And sometimes clients are, but it needs to look exactly like our industry. Like, no, this what needs to look exactly not just like your industry, but like the real world is the conversation that you're having with the
Mm.
partner. The simulation is the sandbox environment, and what needs to happen is it needs to allow for that conversation to happen. And the best way sometimes to do that is to take you out of your industry, move you in a fictitious environment
Absolutely.
so that conversation can happen. So it's always this question of what should be real in a simulation. And my answer after 25 years of doing this is that not much in the simulation, but a lot in the conversation that happens
Ooh, I
Mhm,
around
like
it.
that.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah, I like that. And let me ask you something again, just and again, put aside your humble element here. When we're talking about these type of consequences that inspire all of this reflection. I mean, what does a really good consequence actually look like in a great simulation on the Ability platform?
So many to choose from. Now, it's I'll give you a really good one because we talked about, what does a great leader, what are some of the things that they don't do well, like outside of
Hmm.
giving feedback. One of the things that I've seen most leaders be that's really hard for most leaders is figuring out where to spend your time correctly. So most leaders spend their time on either the superstars that you spend too much time with them because it's
Mm.
fun, or the problem kids that you have to like sort of manage on a daily basis. In one of our simulations, and I love this example, we've built in this character who is really good at their job. They're not like a superstar, and they never say anything. They're just getting the job done, and they're just the person that you always put on the project. They will always do the job. And in the course of the simulation, just like in the real world, we make you forget about that person. So all sorts of other people that you interact with, and then in the last quarter, so each quarter is like about 20 minutes, we send a resignation letter, and you see the hush in the room. And I hope I'm not spoiling the simulation for those. I hope
We'll keep the title
forget what I
moving,
said when he goes through.
okay?
But it is so powerful because you see in that moment, everyone gets the letter at the same time. The people that have forgotten about this person, and most of it's like 70-80%, right? And everyone is like, oh my God, I forgot about her. And you see that realization, and that's that visceral learning that simulations can bring out. That and that those people will then, and then obviously you have a discussion around it, and you ask, who is this person in your real job, right? Like, who have you forgotten about?
Mm.
Mm.
And so it's in those moments that we really feel that connective tissue happens, where people go, okay, I'm going to now pay more attention, and that's one of those, pay more attention, not just to the people that clamor for attention, but to the people that really will help me
Wow.
become successful.
Mm.
I'm making a note here because I'm thinking of several people that I work with that I think alarm bells are going off for me personally. So this is a great moment of insight. You've just exposed a gap for me, so thank you for that. And on that note, Lisa, I want to ask you something here. So, we're talking about bringing in solutions like Ability to a client, and one of the opportunities here is getting a chance to really see the gaps within a leadership group. And I'm going to assume that would make some individuals a little nervous when you start to discuss programs that could expose gaps. So, what's that conversation look like? How do you ensure, let's say, psychological safety when you're having those type of conversations?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we love about working as a partner with Ability is that the focus is not on performance management, but on practice. And they cultivate an environment in the simulation that's about practicing. And what the story that Bjorn just told, uh, for me, and in terms of how we create that impactful behavior change we were talking about earlier, stems from creating a memory, a moment where you're like, wow, I will never forget that. You just had that experience just now, Michael, when you listened to him convey the story. You're never going to forget the unsung hero on your team now because of what he shared with you. And that's what comes out when you're in the setting, in the simulation. If we created an environment, which Ability does not do, that was about, measuring up, about, how you're performing, making sure that you're, meeting certain standards, it really wouldn't work because the focus would be on the wrong things. But they
Mm.
create an environment that's about uncovering, and practicing the skill sets where you do have gaps. So that's where the accent mark needs to be placed when you're beginning to roll out a journey like this that includes the skill set plus the simulation, which is what we do together as partners. We provide the skill set, but then we give you a safe place to practice it so that you can take it back out and
Mm.
it becomes muscle memory for you as opposed to something punitive, something that a watchdog is looking out to see how well you do it.
That's awesome. I mean, as someone who's pretty much been a lifelong learning experience designer, one of the things I'm a firm believer is when your brain feels safe, when it feels unusually nice, it's opened up for peak performance. And yeah, if you were in a performance management, you kind of have that reptilian fight or flight thing. You're not going to remember anything because you're going to be so afraid of it, for sure. So, okay, so let's keep this thing on track here. I know there's so much that to talk about, but one of the things I wanted to talk about here is scale. I mean, at GP here, we have a commitment to learning velocity, and that's closing the gap between an organizational challenge and capability here. And we're hearing a lot in the workplace about upskilling's not enough right now in this age. We need to get to readiness. And I'm curious here, Bjorn, how, from your opinion and your perspective, how does ability resonate or align with that idea of adding scale?
It is actually exactly at that intersection where, when e-learning first appeared, everyone thought, well, now we can scale learning, MOOCs, right? Everyone can learn just from a video, right? An online interaction. And and if that had been true, I think most people, instead of starting universities, would have just gone to libraries and read books and became world experts through books. And some people can do that, right? I mean, there's autodidacts out there that prefer to do it that way versus going to university, right? But most people don't learn that way. Most people need that environment, that social environment. So the challenge that Fortune 500 companies have is, how do you create that social environment at scale? And that's actually, and we're such grateful partners to GP Strategies, because we work with many Fortune 500 companies with you, and that's where scale is required. The secret formula, if you will, that the GP Strategies and Ability that we have found, I think, with the clients that we're working together on, is we've been able to create that social environment that isn't just e-learning, that isn't just the online video, and we've proceduralized it so that it can scale to thousands of people, because a lot of what we do is online, right? So it's a Zoom call, not a classroom, so eliminate some travel, right? And it is a consistent experience because of the simulation. We have great facilitators, but it's not reliant on a brilliant facilitator, although most of them are, I should say, but it's not reliant on just the facilitator alone. The simulation does a lot of the legwork to create consistency when you roll a program out to thousands of managers, to thousands of new managers. And I think that's where this partnership between GP Strategies and Ability has really just been so powerful, because we were able to use these simulated experiences to create meaningful learning, meaningful social learning, facilitated learning at scale.
Yeah, and I like the fact, I will attest this because I've had a chance to be in some cohorts. I like the fact the practice occurs over time. It's not just a one-time event. So you're getting those continuous reps over time. And in anything, whether it's a guitar or leadership, it takes time to put in the reps and go through that curve here. And Lisa, let me expand this lens a bit. When you are implementing different leadership development programs, give us a picture of what, let's say, high velocity leadership development program feels like inside an organization. So lift us up to that 30,000 foot view and share your perspective.
Yeah, so high velocity learning, when we design these experiences for clients, tends to have a lot of chunk down elements, micro bursts of learning that occur through the flow of work. It's no longer, let's pull people out of their work to come and participate in a 1, 2 day, or even half day experience to get immersed in the content and the skill set and then go back to the workplace. That used to be the big challenge, right? How do we take people off
Right.
the work to get the learning in, and justifications that went with that to make that happen. Now it's coming to an organization like GP Strategies to say, how can you, GP Strategies, cultivate an experience, create an experience for us that actually happens in their workday? And 60 minutes here, 90 minutes there, and they're taking those skill sets back and applying them immediately. How do you then use things like a simulation to reinforce, coaching to embed? So those things are all strung together when we design those experiences, so that it might on the aggregate look longer. So it might be like a 6 week or a 5 week extended journey, um, but it's 60 to 90 minutes in a given week. It's 30 minutes here, 30 minutes there, and you're just imparting just enough knowledge to move the needle. And then giving them the practice through the simulation or getting feedback through coaching, whether that's group or avatar or whatever. But you're giving them the feedback as well as giving them the practice time, as well as giving them an opportunity to learn the skill set. But it's all blended together and it's microbursts of learning in the flow of work.
Yeah, what I like about that, what I'm hearing is that that's how humans are wired to truly learn, internalize, retain something. And as someone that's gone through GP's Leadership Essentials cohort, virtual cohort like that, I found it amazingly just insightful, but also throughout the flow of a work week, it was just no problem to get through it. And I looked forward to getting in back with the coach and the cohort and see all the asynchronous feedback from everyone. And that kind of brings me to a question I wanted to ask, Bjorn, because I'm thinking about this personally when it comes to practice here is, if you were designing from scratch a leadership journey, what would you say is the minimum practice cadence that you design in?
Yeah, that's another great question because I do like Lisa believe in like repeated practice and smaller chunks. I will say that I also a believer that going back to my pilot training, right? Like there is a certain amount of knowledge and there's a certain amount of practice that you do need to be a proficient pilot. And I do think the same is true for leadership. So um, while I am on the chunking bandwagon as well, I do feel we're talking with many learning leaders so that are going, I love your simulations. Can we have 5 minutes, right? And it's like, well,
I want one
yeah,
on
yeah. It's
TikTok.
like, I mean, just set up a Twitter account and tweet some words of wisdoms. It's so there is, I
You need
think.
your 10,000 hours, right? In some ways. So,
Yeah, in some ways, that's the key, Michael. I couldn't agree. We used to joke around as learning development experts and say, well, at some point, clients are going to come to us, going to ask us to just give them a pill, and that the pill is going to give them the skill set. But so it's ever evolving. And I'm with Bjorn that you've got to find the right mix for the organization and for their culture. But you've got to have repetition in there somewhere. You've got to have the practice in there somewhere. How they get it might differ based on the organization and the kind of work that they do. They might be better suited to have a heavier emphasis on coaching, and their organization might be conducive to receiving that coaching live, or they might be the kind of organization that needs to receive coaching in more of a AI based format, or they might need multiple simulations. It just you've got to go in and assess the situation, the client, their needs, and what's palatable to get them to that outcome.
absolutely. You're making a case for both of you. And if I put a bow on this, I'm hearing you need a practice cadence that's frequent enough to matter, but you also need that reflection. And I will say you need the frameworks so you can really start to transfer it over time. So I mean that sounds great here. So okay, one last question. We're getting the flag from our producers here. They're saying you two are on the call. You've got things to do here, so I appreciate your time. But I'm going to ask you one last question. I'm going to share. I'm going to give Bjorn first chance on this one, then you, Lisa. So
I've answered
yeah,
so many before. I'll let Lisa go first.
okay, Lisa, I'll let you go first here. Okay, so here's the last question. If a leader listening, they want to start tomorrow, what's just one thing they should do to help improve their leadership development?
The one thing they should do to be, I go back to the three pillars that and I were talking about earlier. They've just got to, the word that comes to mind is openness. They've just got to be open and receptive to the possibilities of what the skill set could do for their leadership and how it could help through them improve the organization. So that ties to the humble pillar that Bjorn was talking about earlier, the observation and the curiosity. Just be open.
I love it. Okay, how about you, Bjorn? One thing.
I would say actually, I mean, I think in the world of AI, it is so interesting that so many people are talking about AI and how it's going to change our world, and so few people are actually sitting down and really using AI to improve their day to day. So I will say, in a world that will be dominated by AI, to be able to understand what it can and cannot do to help you simplify your life, that's going to be a really important skill that I would, and I'm encouraging all employees of mine and myself to like kind of, it's new to everyone, but I think that is going to be a skill that we'll need to learn, and as leaders.
Oh, that's so good. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank Björn Billhardt, CEO of Abilitie, and Lisa Fagan, VP of Sales for Leadership Development and Inclusion at GP Strategies, for sharing their wisdom and insight. Thank you both for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great working with you both.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone.
All right, that's a wrap. Thanks everyone for listening to the award-winning Performance Matters podcast, brought to you by GP Strategies, the learning velocity company. For 60 years, we've helped organizations build capability with the speed, relevance, and quality that make real performance possible. You can subscribe to the show anywhere you get podcasts or listen on our website at gpstrategies.com.